Hi everyone. Welcome to Professional Ethics for the Library and Information Professions. A little fun dramatic sounds for you, effects for you there. So I'm Kim Mathiesen, and I teach here at School of Information at the University of Arizona. You know that. All right, so what am I going to talk about today? Starting with an overview. First, I want to talk about ethical theory and what is that and how does that relate to ethics, like when we talk about professional ethics or a code of ethics. Then I'm going to talk about professions. What does it mean to be a member of a profession and how that's related to ethics. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about intellectual freedom as an important goal or a mission for library and information professionals. Then I'm going to briefly mention the ALA Code of Ethics and give you a chance to go look at that on your own. All right, so just start with a joke. Here is some Dilbert for you. So Dilbert gets an email message. Yes, do that right away. Do what? Dilbert asks Dogbert. Can I ignore email from people who don't include my original message in their reply? Dogbert says, yes, and you can hate them too. And Dilbert thinks 90% of happiness is picking the right ethicist. So, of course, we don't want to just pick the right ethicist who will tell us what we would like to hear. We want to think about what is it that we really ought to be doing as individuals or profession, as a society, and try to, as best we can, move in that direction. So I hope that this lecture, and then when you take 520, it'll help you think through these issues and help you avoid just going along with what somebody says who you already agree with. In fact, that's a big challenge in 520. You get to see lots of different points of view. Okay, so what is ethics? So when we talk about ethics, we can be talking either about the discipline or the study of ethics, which in philosophy, that's one of the main areas of study is study of ethics or ethical theory. It's also called moral theory or value theory because it's about the values that we have. It can be defined as a branch of philosophy concerned with the evaluation of human conduct. So the idea is that we're going to evaluate how people behave and try to determine whether it's right and wrong, or evaluating possible courses of action for ourselves and determining what's the right or wrong course of action. And it's also the study of the nature of obligation and the good. What are we obliged to do? What are we obliged not to do? What would be good to do? What is the good? So how does that relate to kind of small e ethics, like when we talk about a code of ethics? This kind of ethics is also called morals or values. In fact, I typically use the terms, moral, value, ethics interchangeably. I don't make a big distinction between them. And ethics usually refers to the conception of the good and the particular obligations that guide behavior of a particular person or group. So there's ethical theory that tries to say, here's how we should think about ethical questions. Here's how we should determine what's the right answer to an ethical question. But then there's also one's own particular set of values or one's own profession set of values and morals. And those are often maybe more specialized to the particular person or to the particular profession. So what's the relationship between ethical theory and ethics? And my claim is that a complete, coherent, and defensible ethics will be based on a sound understanding of ethical theory. And that's why in 520 we actually spend quite a bit of time looking at ethical theories as different methods of ethical thinking. So I tend to think of ethical theories as like methods, research methods. Research methods, there's a bunch of different research methods, and it's not there's one right research method, but that you need to know the different kinds to know what research method might be the most appropriate to pursue a particular line of inquiry. And it's the same thing with ethical theories. They help provide you with tools or ways of thinking about ethical questions so that when you develop your own set of ethics, your own professional code of ethics, as you do when you become a professional and you're involved in your professional organization and maybe revising codes of ethics, that you're able to bring those tools to bear to think through the ethical issues and be able to justify and defend your positions on various ethical questions and explain them to others. Okay, so that's the ethics side. What's the profession side? Because we're talking here about professional ethics. Well, first it's useful to reflect on what is a profession. And the standard definition of a profession is that it's an occupation that regulates the activities of its members. So it's not just any old person can do it. There's actually, it's organized and regulates what people do when they take on this job or position. And typically the way that professions are regulated is through specialized training and certification, and that's what you guys are going to be doing. You're going to be getting your master's, many of you, master's in library science, and that is going to, and this program is certified, accredited by the American Library Association, which is thereby, keeping quality control over who enters the profession and ensuring they have the requisite training. Professions have professional organizations, and there's a number of different professional organizations in library and information science. There's the Society of American Archivists, there's the American Library Association, there are many, many others. And the other thing that sets apart a profession from a mere job is that professions have codes of ethics that they hold members to. And in fact, some have actually defined professions in a way that really highlights or makes central the idea that values or morals or ethics are central to the very idea of our profession. That the idea is that a profession is something that's pursuing a moral ideal, that professions are trying to achieve a certain kind of moral ideal. They're there because we need them in the society to do something that we think is really valuable. So if you think about it, if you're a fan of Jane Austen novels, as I am, you would know that the younger sons often have to have a profession. And at that period, there were only 4 professions. There was the law, the clergy, medicine, which came a little bit later. Early medicine wasn't so much a profession, but a little bit later, around the time of George Eliot, it became a profession, medicine, and the military. And these are the 4 professions. And if you think about it, each one of them was there because there was an important societal need for people to really take on this mission of protecting the society, ensuring the health of the society, making sure the laws were fairly enforced and written, and fostering the spiritual health of the society. Each of these are really important roles. So that's the idea, is that a profession has this important mission, important role to serve in the society that we need people to do, and we need them to do it in an ethical way. So what are professional ethics? How do we put those two ideas together? We've already seen that professions have inherent in them an idea of a value, a moral mission. So ethics are going to really spell out what is the conception of the good and the particular obligations that should guide the behavior of people in that profession. So professional ethics are grounded in the moral ideal of the profession. What is it that this profession is supposed to be doing in the society? Why is it valuable? What is it supposed to be fostering? And then we can say, okay, what kind of ethical principles would allow a professional to pursue that in the best way possible? So I'd like you guys to stop and think for a moment. What do you think is the moral ideal or ideals of the library and information professions? What is its important social function? So what is the important social function that library information professionals pursue or do, such that we need a profession for it? Some kind of special certification, special ethical rules and regulations. Why do we need that? What is so special that we need a profession? What is the moral ideal that it serves? So you can take a second and stop the tape and think about that. Well, one thing you might have thought about, might have said, is that the important value that library and information professionals are pursuing and providing for the society is protecting intellectual freedom and access to information. And indeed, the idea that people have a right to have access to information and a right to express themselves is embedded in both the U.S. Constitution and in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And in fact, I always think that Article 19 really is like perfect, succinct statement of the kind of right that libraries are protecting. And this is the right, the freedom to hold opinions and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontier. And I think that's really the mission of library information professionals, is to ensure that those rights are protected and those rights are enabled, that people can actually pursue them. So why is, I'm going to want to say a little, it might be obvious that that's important and it's in the Constitution, it's in the Bill of Rights, but why is it so important? Why do we need a profession in order to protect intellectual freedom? And I want to say a little bit about how, from an ethical perspective, thinking about fundamental human values, how we would defend that, or why it's so essential. And I want to argue just shortly in this lecture that intellectual freedom is essential to the satisfaction of three fundamental human interests or needs: the need to express ourselves, to deliberate, and the need to have information. So first of all, human beings have a basic interest in being able to express themselves and articulate their thoughts and feelings on issues of concern to themselves and to the broader community. But of course, no one can express themselves to others unless other people are able to receive those expressions. I can talk all day long, but if I'm stuck in a small room and I'm not allowed to write anything or allowed to record my voice so other people can hear me, then no one's going to hear what I'm saying. I'm not going to be able to express myself. So expression requires that there is access to information. And that's what information professionals are devoted to ensuring, that people have access to other people's expressions. And we also have this direct interest. We want to hear what other people have to say, right? We want to hear their expressions. We want to know what they think and be able to learn from other people. We also need to be able to deliberate, think through issues, to be able to figure out what it is we want to do as individuals and as a society. But we all know that, as they say, two heads are better than one. We need other people's input to be able to deliberate and think through various options. Just doing it on our own is never going to be as useful. And we can't do that if we don't have access to information and other people's perspectives. And again, this is what ensuring intellectual freedom allows people to get different points of view and to be able to deliberate and figure out what they want to do as an individual and as members of a society. And finally, we just need information, right? If I have a goal or plan or something I want to do, I need information about how to do that. If you want to go to library school, you need information about where are the library schools, how do I apply, how do I fund that, how do I sign up for classes. You just need information to do any kind of thing that you want to do in your life. So we need reliable information, and this is an important thing that library information professionals provide: access to information. All right, I moved a little quickly on to the next slide. So that's why it's such an important mission, why it's so key, is because it's central to satisfying our basic human interests and living a full human life, that we have access to the expressions of others, to be able to deliberate and gain information. So what are the particular areas of ethical concern for library and information professionals given that larger mission? Well, they include, obviously, resisting censorship and bias, because if information is censored, then you can't get access to expression, you can't get access to information. And if it's biased, you'll only get a one-sided set of information. You won't be able to use that information to fairly deliberate because you won't be getting all the sides to the issue. It's also important to provide open and equitable access. So just because something's not censored doesn't mean it's accessible for everyone. It doesn't mean it's equally accessible. It might not be censored, but it might not be in a format that someone could read or access. It might be very expensive, which is one of the reasons why we have public libraries, so people can access the information. So that's another important area of concern for library and information professionals. A third area of concern is protecting privacy and the confidentiality of the patron record. And the idea here is that people won't feel free to seek and receive information if they're concerned that maybe someone won't approve the information they're looking at. So if I'm worried that there's someone looking over my shoulder when I go look up information about suicide prevention because I'm feeling really depressed, if I'm worried someone's going to think, oh, she's a crazy person, and shun me or talk about me to other people, I might not go look at that information. So it's very important that people who are helping to facilitate access to information keep private the kinds of information people are going to want to go look at. And finally, respecting intellectual property while protecting fair use in public domain is another important ethical concern of library information professionals. Because if we don't have intellectual property laws, the point of them is to promote the creation of new intellectual works. The idea is it's a way that people who write novels or textbooks or encyclopedias or whatever it is that they do, it's a way that they will be able to have control of their work and be able to make a living off of that work. And thereby, more people will be creating more novels and more information. So it is important that we understand the value of intellectual property and copyright, and that we respect the rights of authors. But it's also the case that part of the goal behind copyright is so that we have a rich information environment. But that also means that we have to protect people's access to that intellectual property through things like fair use and the public domain, which seeks to provide a balance between the author's rights and the rights of people to have access to information. So it's important to have a balance between those two things. And if you look in the ALA Code of Ethics, they actually have a nice statement now that really shows the balance. It used to be much more on the side of pure protecting IP, and they've more recently come to a more balanced view of protecting copyright, but balancing that with protecting the public domain and fair use. So as I mentioned before, professions have codes of ethics, and if you look at the American Library Association's Code of Ethics, you'll see that all the areas I just mentioned are addressed in the American Library Association Code of Ethics, and also they are addressed in the Library Bill of Rights. So you might want to take a moment and go look at the ALA Code of Ethics and the Library Bill of Rights, or maybe you have it in your book, you can look at it there. Okay, so now I've talked about the mission of the profession, what a profession is, and what the particular ethical issues are that are of particular concern for library and information professionals. And now I want to give you a case where you can think through, okay, based on those values, how would I deal with a particular kind of dilemma that might come up in a library service? So the case I want you to think about is a case that a lot of librarians, people in public libraries, deal with all the time, and that is the issue of homeless people in the public library and how to deal with that particular class of patrons. So I have a particular scenario here. I'll just read it through for you. And then I want you to think about, if you were the head of the library, how would you resolve this issue? So you're head of a public library in an urban area. A number of patrons and some staff have complained about homeless people in the library. Some patrons with children say they worry about their children's safety. Some staff and patrons note that some of the homeless have such bad body odor that it is impossible to be in the same area with them. A number of patrons have said they no longer come to the library because of this situation. So, if you're the head of the library, what are you going to do? What do you think your options are? What are the kinds of things you could do? And once you've laid out your options, what would you choose to do? How are you going to deal with this situation? And how will you explain this decision to everyone concerned? How will you justify it and explain why it's fair? And as you're thinking through this, think about what's the mission of the library? What are the ethical concerns of the librarian or the information professional more broadly, because this applies to many information profession situations as well, how to balance the interests of different people that you're serving. So I hope you enjoy talking about that. It usually gets a lot of discussion going, and I'm really looking forward to, hopefully I will see you in 520. You might take it with someone else, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it, whoever you take it with. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little lecture on ethics.